go. Yes guys, how we doing? Welcome back to my channel, and today we have got yet another parkrun video. This morning I took part in a parkrun, but I decided to do things slightly differently. Instead of giving it an all-out hammering, I decided to run this morning's parkrun in just under 20 minutes. Now, the reason why I chose to run this morning in under 20 minutes is because today's video is all about some helpful tips that can help you to break that 20-minute barrier. So I've put together a detailed guide covering you from absolutely everything from the training to the race day preparation, the gear and the mental side of breaking 20 minutes. And I thought, what better way of doing this than running a sub 20 park run myself? And you can watch my park run as I give you this detailed guide. So just before we jump into that, this is Cheltenham Parkrun number 560, and we had 667 finish. Massive congratulations to all of you. And I just want to say, as always, massive thanks to the marshals. You do a superb job. So breaking the 20 minutes for the 5K is a challenging but highly rewarding goal. To run sub 20 minutes for a 5K, you'll need to focus both on speed and endurance. You also need to adopt a well-rounded approach. That includes high-intensity workouts, pacing strategies, recovery, nutrition and mental toughness. Now that's an awful lot, but I've broken this down into around 10 different points. I'm going to talk you through this video. So to break that sub 20 minute 5K, we need to be averaging faster than 4 minutes per kilometre or 6:26 per mile. Now you'll see in the top left hand corner my pace, and ideally my pace in this run will be below 4 minutes per kilometre. But as you'll see, as part of this park run is quite muddy and there is some bits of elevation, so at times this will fluctuate and this might happen to you in a race. Now the first tip I'm going to give you today is all about building a solid mileage base. Mileage base, we can do this in 3 different ways. The first of which we can do is consistency. Now being consistent is really important. If we can do 3 or 4 running days per week, depending on your experience and your recovery needs, consistency will help you accumulate those aerobic benefits of running, which comes in handy for that 5K distance. Now, the second thing you can do to improve and build on a solid mileage base is those longer runs. Now, I would suggest for the 5K distance, a long run can be anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. Once a week, and incorporating a longer, slower run will increase your aerobic capacity and gradually building this over a period of time. Now the final thing you can do to build yourself a solid mileage base is plenty of easy running. Now I follow an 80-20 principle in that 80% of my running is done at an easier intensity and 20% is done at that harder, higher intensity. So this should mean that when you are running faster, you're running really fast, and when you're running easy, you really are running very easy. Please don't work in between these 2 different zones. So the next tip is all about speed work. Just like adding mileage, speed work is essential. So there are 2 different types of speed sessions that I like to do, and the first of which is a tempo run. Now these runs are done at a pace slightly faster than your goal race pace, and they help you to build stamina and get you used to running at a challenging pace without tiring too quickly. Now the second type of session that I like to do is more of an interval style session. This incorporates short but intense bursts of speeds followed by recovery. For example, 5 by 800 meters at your race pace, followed by a 2-minute recovery. So we've spoke about building mileage and we've spoke about some specific speed sessions that we can do, but we also need to speak about our pacing strategy. So the main thing is to start smart. Resist that urge to go out too fast. Many runners make the same mistake of starting a race far too fast, but simply unsustainable this is and will lead to fatigue. Far easier than if you were to start cautiously. Aim to be steady throughout the race with a little bit of a kick towards the back end. Now, you can also choose to run a negative split approach. Now, this means that the second half of your 5K race, so from 2.5K to 5K, that section of the race is run faster than the first half of the race, from 0 to 2.5 kilometers. This approach helps to prevent burnout and allows you to finish strong, similar to the first point, and it's really a popular strategy for improving running times. Now, this does take a little bit of practice because, as we all know, when we get to that start line, the adrenaline is rushing, but we really need to learn to control that adrenaline and channel it into a good, solid race. The next tip is to improve our running form. Now, everyone can improve their running form no matter what their running competency is. Now, there are 3 ways we can do this. The first way in which is your posture. Try to keep your posture upright and avoid leaning forward too much. Now, this can be leading to your back being strained and will decrease your overall running efficiency. Also, we can look at our cadence. If you aim for a cadence of around 170 to 180 steps per minute, this will help to avoid overstriding, which can lead to injury. Now, you can measure this through a smartwatch. It will be able to tell you what your cadence is. We will also improve our running form through looking at our arm swing. So your arm swing should swing naturally in rhythm with your legs. Don't cross them over your body. Now, we can improve and practice on our arm swing by doing running drills. I'll put a few on the screen now. Doing these running drills will over-exaggerate the movements in running. So hopefully by the time that we come into our running stride, these movements that we have just done in our drills will transition naturally into our running, making us more efficient and improving our running form. Now, let's talk a little bit about the mental side of running a 5K. And let's be honest, a 5K distance is a really hard distance to get right. It hurts from the start and you build up so much lactic acid. But it can also be such a rewarding distance if you get things right mentally. Now, the key is to try and stay positive from the very start. During the race, focus on staying positive even when those things start to get tough. If you start to feel tired, remind yourself of your training and keep your goal time in mind. You can also use visualization before the race begins. Visualize yourself running strong, crossing that finish line with your goal time in mind, nailing that sub 20. This can help to set a positive mental tone for the 5K distance. We also can break the 5K distance down quite nicely into segments. If we break it up into 500 meter or 1 kilometer segments, then we can process the race far easier by going from segment to segment than if we would tell ourselves we were running a straight up 5K at race pace. That can be a little bit daunting. This will just help you to stay on a more positive mindset and hopefully allow you to complete that 5K quicker than if you were to just try and digest the whole 5K in one go. To run a sub 25K, we also need to be very strong. We can do this by hitting the gym and doing strength training at least once, if not twice a week. Strength training has many benefits, but mainly it prevents those injuries, which allows us to train harder and longer. It also improves the strength of each of the muscles, which allows us to push harder in races. Most importantly, I would focus on exercise such as squats, lunges, some core work and plyometrics when you are in the gym. As important as strength training is and other training is, it's equally important to ensure that our recovery is on point. We need to prioritize recovery by taking rest days when needed. I would also suggest using things like foam rollers or Theraguns to relieve muscle tightness and try to get plenty of sleep. The next bit is all about gear and shoes. First of all, shoes. You want to wear something that you feel comfortable and that you're used to wearing and running in, but they are not too worn that the shoe and the foam is deteriorating. Now, I tend to wear carbon plated shoes because I believe in the science that supports carbon racing shoes. But I do also understand that these aren't for everyone. They are not the be all and end all. Wear what is comfortable and wear what you feel confident in. It might be worth getting a pair of fitted shoes, and you can get a gait analysis where they'll assess your own running gait and they might suggest wearing a certain style of shoes that will help you and your personal running style. Now, you also want to be wearing moisture wicking clothes and clothes that avoid chafing. Clothes that will keep you dry and cool in a race. Now, I tend to wear just a singlet and some shorts. I keep it simple. I don't like to wear layers, and I certainly don't like to wear a camelback on a 5K distance. It's just not necessarily. But ideally, you're wearing lightweight clothing, nothing that's going to be too restricting. Now let's talk about fueling and hydration. Now the first aspect I want to talk about is carbo loading. So this is when you increase your carbohydrate intake to maximize those glycogen stores. Now this essentially gives you energy before the race. Now personally, I don't think you need to overthink this. If you're running a marathon or a half marathon, then yes, by all means, you will need to overdo the amount of carbs you consume. But for the 5K distance, you might want to consume slightly more than what you normally would do, but you don't need to go over the top. You don't want to feel stodgy and heavy come race day. In terms of your hydration, ideally you want to stay as hydrated as much as you possibly can. I drink water and occasionally I will have the electrolyte drinks. But drinking water regularly and consider electrolyte drinks for longer runs to replace those lost minerals on race day. You want to ensure that 2 or 3 days leading into the race, you're nicely hydrated. But in terms of fueling during the race, personally, I don't think you need to drink anything during a 5K distance. I don't believe you need to eat or consume any gels during the race either. For longer runs that last more than 1 hour, consider carrying gels, chews, or snacks that will help replenish those lost glycogen stores, and possibly take on some water on board for anything over that 1 hour. Something we can do to improve our 5K time as well and help us crucially run under that 20 minutes is adding cross training into our training. Now, cross training can be swimming, cycling, or using the elliptical machine. This will help to improve our cardiovascular fitness without putting as much strain on your body as running does. As runners, we like to do a lot of miles during the week, but that can be to the detriment of our ligaments and our joints. Doing cross training will give you those zone 2 easier, quicker benefits to the cardiovascular system without putting too much through the body. It's a really nice change up to do, and it's something that I'm doing more and more in my training. Now let's talk about tapering. Now tapering is reducing your weekly mileage into your race week leading up to that big race. This allows your body to recover and to perform at its absolute peak. Now it's key to keep your workout shorter but maintain that intensity, and the intensity needs to stay sharp. Now I like to do around 50 to 60% of my weekly mileage during that 5K race week, keeping the intensity the exact same. This keeps me fresh and ready to go, and it means that when the race day arrives, I can remember and remind myself how that race pace feels, but I'm also feeling quite fresh in the legs to go give it that all-out max effort. Now, crucially, something that I love to do in my training and something that I bang on about all the times, and if you'd have seen my channel, you're probably sick to death of me saying this, but I like to do hills in my training, and there are so many different benefits of running the hills. So the first thing that it works on is working on those hamstrings and those glutes when you're running uphill. Now, this is so beneficial because if you're using the hills correctly, what it will do is it will reduce the time to fatigue, and the buildup of lactic acid will be delayed further. So by the time you come onto the flat, that time you would normally hit that lactate buildup, it will be pushed back further, and it will allow you to push harder for longer. Those leg muscles will become far stronger and resistant to pain and fatigue. Running up hills will also help you to use your arms more. Now that sounds ridiculously simple, but when you are running uphill, you are required to use those arms that little bit more than on the flat. Now if you can get used to using those arms by the time we get on the flat, hopefully this transition will be into your normal running style. Those arms will swing more and your running efficiency will improve as a result of this. Again, meaning you can hit faster paces for longer with a lot less effort used. Now we need to talk about tracking your progress. I would argue you need to keep a log of your runs, include distances, times, and how you felt. Most importantly, this can help you to spot patterns and improvements over a period of time. It'll allow you to assess what works best with you in your training, and it also, most importantly, allows you to see weaknesses in your training. Don't be shy, and when you see a weakness in your training, target that as part of your training. For me personally, my top end speed is not fast enough. So that's something that I'm working on at this moment in time because it's a weakness in my running. It's also equally as important to adjust your goals and consistently review your training. Look at your race times in training and adjust your expectations. Base it on the improvements that you're making. And if you're continuously hitting certain paces, use that data to set a realistic goal for that day. Now remember, in training, we don't always have fresh legs. So you'll need to adjust your expectation if you had a really heavy week of training. You're not necessarily going to hit your race pace at every given time. Let's talk about race day. So when the big day arrives, I've got a few pieces of advice I want to share with you. Arrive nice and early. Get to the start line to avoid any of that extra stress. Stress is a really bad thing, especially on race day. And by arriving early, this will give you time to focus on a good warm-up. Now with the warm-up, I would suggest doing a light jog, some dynamic stretches, and doing some strides before your race. Get those muscles ready. It will prevent an injury. Now personally, I would suggest doing 10 to 15 minutes of light jogging. Follow this with some dynamic stretches, some drills, and then I would do some strides. And if you still feel the need to do some running afterwards, you can do. The 5K distance will be over in a flash. It's really important to ensure that when we get to that start line, our body is warm and we are ready to go. So that essentially is the guide to running a sub 20 minute 5K. Now there are many different elements that come into it, but I thought I'd leave you with my race day pacing strategy. Now I would suggest starting, as mentioned earlier, a little bit slower than goal pace, which is 6:30 per mile, or in kilometers, it's 4:05 per kilometer, especially if you're prone to going out too fast. A steady, consistent effort is crucial. So for the first mile, I'll resist that urge to go out too fast. Aim for 6:30 pace or slower. Focus on settling into your rhythm. At the second mile, I would start to push slightly, not too much, but don't burn those matches too soon. Stay on pace and focus on staying smooth and efficient. Now, mile 3 is the key to finishing strong. As you approach that last mile, aim to hit 6:20 per mile or 3 minutes per kilometer or slightly faster. Now, when you get to that final stretch and you can see the finish line, it goes without saying, push as hard as you can for that 400 meters. Use everything you have left and remember that every second counts. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Now I'm going to leave the rest of this park run to roll out with raw footage, and you can hear me breathing and panting heavily. I'm with my friend Dom here on the left hand side, so enjoy the rest of this. Thank you, good luck with your training, leave anything down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
I know after that Telford he was really sort of like motivated to do more miles.
Yeah.
But that sounds like a lot of heavy miles. Thank you, Marshall. Well done. Whoop. Right. 4 seconds to make up. Yep. Well, on this K.
This side?
Huh?
In the dark blue.
Oh yeah, there he is.
There he is. 93-minute man.
Yeah. Well done, Si. Well done, mate. Well done. Well done last week. Whoa, yeah, thank you. Wheel spinning everywhere here.
Yeah.
Whoa. Thank you.
Tardy, right on time for the parties and Barbies. Strolling with a chunk of green like a golf sweet.